As air pollution levels in the British capital reach
Talking about Everglades restoration, even as he's being criticized
to boat or
for
swim in
underfunding.
America's
The crude
lakes and
crisis
rivers
began on the evening
Lake Hiawatha filling up with trash. And
as an industrial accident hundreds of miles away could have such an impact on us.
was put in place in 1970, causing an outbreak of toxic
Environmental
algae.
pollution contributed to the deaths of about 9 million people in 2015.
The biggest problem facing Lake Alberta and its wildlife right now is garbage. And you can't go to Lake Alberta and not see huge amounts of trash. So Lake Alberta goes back to the late 90s. And basically what was happening is the same thing that happens now. Lake Alberta used to be a big crate factory way back when. And everything to the north of it, basically where the stadium is, was wetland. So naturally, if you look at Tallahassee, you got a big hill. And water would drain down that hill, and it would basically flow into this wetland, where it would then be filtered out to streams and ultimately down to Munson Slough, ultimately down to the Gulf of Mexico. Instead, now there's concrete and pavement and all those impediments to water flow. And so what would happen is these floods would happen and water would just settle where it always had, but unfortunately now that's people's homes, parking lots, etc. It's a huge issue, lots of controversy, and FSU was just kind of tired of the problem. And so they pushed for this old crate factory to become a retention pond to store water. And all these projects in 1999 were bypassed, and believe it or not, Jeb Bush was like, no, that's a project that I want to support. There are various reasons as to why that was the case, but the long and short of it is that's what led to Lake Alberta Park existing. You look at it, you think it's been there forever, but it's 20 years old this year. And so the more I went there, I fell in love with it. And as I've been doing this project, I've really fallen in love with it because I've seen the larger context it sits within, not just for wildlife, but for the whole community. And it's a magical place. I know that sounds weird to say about a retention pond, but it really is a special place, a place I love a lot. I go out to Lake Alberta at least 3 times a week. I used to go about once a week, and I go more now because it's my baby. It's become my place in Tallahassee. And I go out there at night. I go out there early in the morning. I go out there during lunch breaks. I vary the times. I talk to people. I tell them about the project. Sometimes I just go and sit. I just love it. And it's neat to watch the change, especially now in spring. You can actually see wildlife responding to the things we've done. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, which is far away from here, but same kind of issues that Florida has with development and urban sprawl. And I grew up in a suburb of Columbus and used to go four-wheeling and snake catching on this plot of land that was right across from the Ohio equivalent of Publix. It's called Kroger. And it was this huge natural area. I saw a coyote take down a deer one time. I saw foxes there, all kinds of birds and snakes. And then one day I went there and there's bulldozers in the middle of it. And everything was going away. I watched it slip away. What was put there? A Kroger and a strip mall, just like what was across the street. And then across the street ended up becoming abandoned and vacant. And I realized the waste and the lack of concern that certain people had for wildlife, and that is the moment where I decided that I wasn't going to let that fly without putting up a fight. And I was a young kid at that point, and I haven't I have put up the fight every time I can from that point forward. The Lake Elberta project is the first time I've written a grant and I've kind of spearheaded a project related to the environment, but I've participated in a number of projects: invasive plant removals, surveys for listed species. I've tried to make as many presentations and write as many articles as I can to promote the conservation of our resources here in Florida, which I consider a project. That's kind of my pet project, is get people to care about the nature that lives here, or that's found here. What's neat about Lake Elberta is it's fresh enough that there's still new improvements being made even this year. So it's still, I guess, a work in progress, which is kind of where our project fits in. The reason we chose Lake Elberta as the site for a project, our first big issue was to tackle the problem of invasive species. It was covered in mimosa, camphor, Japanese climbing fern, all these terrible invasive exotic species. So we removed those, and we almost removed all of them. And then the city of Tallahassee came in and kind of took care of the rest, which was awesome. We planted native wildflower seed and supplemented that with native plants. We put in a purple martin structure, and so we expect purple martins to move in, which are great predators of fire ants, believe it or not. So I guess in terms of species, we've seen a lot of benefits. Last week I was there getting my hands dirty putting native plants in the ground. The efforts of Appalachia Audubon and the interns really have benefited Lake Elberta, and I believe the community around Lake Elberta. We have involved the community as much as possible, working with local nonprofits, local community center groups of underserved audiences to bring them to Lake Elberta, give them binoculars, make them see why this place is so special. And then we've just held general cleanup events and interpretive events where people can come out from the public and experience the best of Lake Elberta with the experts who know it best and kind of realize the magic of that place for themselves. That's what we've really been trying to do. We've seen species of birds come in that were not a common sight before. I've seen owls regularly, I've seen bluebirds regularly. A year ago, I didn't see very many of those. Lake Elberta is the fourth most species-rich place for birds in Leon County. I kept hearing that people were seeing all these crazy birds there. All sorts of weird stuff, redneck grebe, Pacific loon, birds that you normally have to go not just out of state, but far out of state to see, were showing up at Lake Elberta, this 21-acre retention pond. How was that possible? I went to check it out for myself and realized it's a nice little walk, it's a nice little break to just kind of walk around the loop and see what you see. And in the past, almost 3 years, every single time I've gone there, I've seen something cool, and often something I've never seen there before. I mean, it's more species rich than parts of the Apalachicola National Forest. And it's a retention pond. The reason it's so species rich, though, is it has a huge diversity of habitats, and for whatever reason, it has just what a variety of bird species need to survive.
There's like mockingbirds, the wood storks, there's a lot of different ducks, there's Canadian geese that go there, great blue heron, we've seen a bald eagle, hawks, there's like turtles there too.
Is an alligator there?
There was an alligator there for one of our events.
What we tried to do was identify how could we make it better for birds and wildlife, but also make it better for people at the same time. As far as the community goes, I've seen more people, and I know this because I've talked to them, more people from the surrounding area use Lake Elberta than were using it a year before. And even more exciting than that, I've seen more college students and young people and to be honest, white people, Caucasian people, use the park than ever did before. Lake Elberta, I should mention, sits in a predominantly African-American community. And I can go there now and I see just as many African-American and Caucasian people walking around that lake at the same time. There's not many places in Tallahassee where you get that kind of mix of diversity to that extent. And so that to me tells me that we're doing something right. We're making these people happy and these people happy and making it better for everybody. And I expected the wildlife, I didn't expect the community. And I think that's been really cool to see that the community's responded to this as well. Lake Elberta sits within the south part of Tallahassee, which is one of the most underserved and impoverished areas of Tallahassee. And I don't say that in a disparaging way at all. I say that as a label. The south side of Tallahassee has just kind of been the neglected part of Tallahassee for a really long time. And yet it has amazing people, amazing environments, amazing resources, and amazing potential. And so realizing that, I looked at this site as kind of the catalyst for change, for not just wildlife, but for the whole community.
They don't have any parks, so how can you relate that to anything? How can you say like, oh, this is not a good park for us, or this isn't fair, because there's nothing else to compare it to. I want people who look like me to care about what's around them. Like, I want you to care that the park is trash. I want you to care that your kids can't go outside and play. So like, if you want to take your kid to the park, it should be a nice, safe place where you feel comfortable and they feel comfortable. They don't feel, any kind of way about it.
If you saw Lake Elberta a year ago and saw it now, you'd be shocked at the difference. It is unbelievable what can happen when you rally people around a single unifying cause, what they can accomplish.
The park definitely looks a lot cleaner. There's less trash. It is a stormwater retention pond, so like, even if you don't litter at the park, your litter a few miles away could end up at the park because it didn't go in a trash can, it ended up in the stormwater drain, and it went into Lake Elberta. Really cleaning it up has curtailed like the littering that was going on before. I've definitely seen more people come to use the park, which has been really exciting. Our Arbor Day event, we planted so many trees. Yeah. And so now, there's a nice tree path to get to the park from Gain Street. And then coming from FAMU Way, there's like edible plants. There's blueberries that are going to be ready in like 2 months. So there's a lot of plants that are there that weren't there before. And then a lot of trash that was there that isn't there now. So.
If we can stem the tide of garbage coming into that lake, we'd be doing a lot. And what that would allow us to do is focus our efforts on invasives or focus our efforts on plantings and really make more of a direct impact in a more efficient way at Lake Elberta if we didn't have the trash to deal with. So we've done a lot. We've helped a lot, especially on land to remove trash, but every single time it rains, FSU students throwing their plastic bottles in the garbage and throwing their trash on the ground. Basically, FSU and their system of water feeds Lake Elberta. So I'm not just randomly placing blame. Unfortunately, FSU students are really responsible for a lot of the trash that ends up at Lake Elberta. And it not only makes it unsightly and repels people from visiting, but it directly harms wildlife. We actually had a wildlife rehabber come out there one time and rescue a ruddy duck that had become entangled in fishing line. Part of that, is people using the site directly, fishing and leaving their trash, people visiting and biking and leaving their trash.
By keeping the park clean or by keeping that area nice or like livable for the wildlife that come and visit, not only does it I think bring people to the park, but then I think it gives them like some type of like connection to it. So like when you feel connected to something, you'll feel more likely to go and take care of it, or you want people to come. And then now you have more birds, so that could also bring money to that area because people want to see nice things. Like you're more likely to help something that looks nice than you are to help something that doesn't look nice.
I definitely believe that protecting the environment is important. I don't believe that protecting the environment is a partisan issue. I don't believe it's a issue tied to a certain race, a certain gender, a certain belief system. We all breathe air. We all require clean water. And nature is beneficial to you whether you are a farmer living in Kenya or a business executive in Manhattan. it matters to us all. And so it is critically important to all of us. I mean, it's why we're alive. And in addition to that, I believe that there are intrinsic values of spending time in nature that benefit each of us physically, mentally, and spiritually, to be honest.
So today is a great event. It's the Leon County City Nature Challenge. And we're competing with like all over the world to identify as many species as we can with iNaturalists.
Being able to see all these different species, it is such a hot spot for Tallahassee. I've been amazed at what will come by here just because there's this little spot of nature and water and plants and insects for the birds.
It's going really well. I think people are having a lot of fun. You know, people are making lots of observations about birds and other wildlife that are here. And then we have other events like kids can play with the chalk and draw their favorite bird, or we have binoculars and a spotting scope so people can go birding around the lake. It's been a lot of fun. We're gonna keep having fun. So the weather's great out. So I'm really excited to see how many observations we get at the end of the day today.
Here at Lake Elberta for Ecocitizen Day has gone pretty well. We've seen a lot of different families, and most importantly, a lot of different families who have never been here before visit the site, see the wildlife that lives here, see the plants that live here, and most importantly with that, see the connection between what we've done here as an Audubon chapter and as volunteers and the birds and other wildlife we're seeing. So it's kind of neat to see it all kind of come together. Check this out. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not sure if this is natural or not.
This is the floor.
Yeah, that's all limestone, and this big thing broke away and made a cliff, and then now there's all these ferns growing right on the
so
cliff.
if there wasn't a cliff, then we could walk across.
Mm-hmm. And there's some palms down there. That's why I call it the jungle. See the palms down there?
Look.
Yeah, there's palms and
And what?
And what? Yeah, there's tons of rocks. Look at that cool thing over there.
Wow.
Isn't that neat? And then look at the little cave. Overall, I'm really happy with how everything's gone with Lake Elberta because we did the base work, the foundational work of putting plants in, putting structures in to allow birds to nest here and live here. And as a result, wildlife's coming here, and then that's attracting people. And honestly, as we've cleaned up the park, that's attracted people too, just to make this a more welcoming place. And so over time, we've seen, more people and more wildlife. And so I think those two metrics alone indicate that we've been pretty successful. One of the things that I would encourage everyone to think about is, what can I do to make this planet better? We're facing crises upon crises, environmental, social. Everyone should think to themselves, what can I do to help things? And find the path that guides them to a place where they can. And if everyone did that, the world would be a better place. And I would encourage everyone to think about that.